Do
Okay.
you recommend, like a lot of people are constipated, we don't eat enough fiber, and you talk about that in your book a lot. I think you say that Americans on average eat 15 grams of fiber, whereas indigenous peoples in Africa or in South America will, if they are eating whole foods, they will eat 100 grams of fiber. Y- Tell us about fiber. What does that mean? Um, People don't really know. They think of Metamucil,
Yeah, good
Yeah,
which
point.
is not the one you recommend. Uh,
no, not at all. Yeah, and so fiber. I think we need to start over a little bit, and erase the image of your grandma stirring up that orange drink so that she could poop, and let's take it from the top, which is that fiber is a part of every single plant. There is no plant that is devoid of fiber, and plants have a monopoly. And fiber in the plant helps to give it its structure. But what happens in our body when we eat foods that contain fiber is, I think, a pretty radical, beautiful thing. It's not just in the mouth and then launching out the other end like a torpedo. Okay, that's what we've been told, and that's not true. That's a bold-faced lie. Okay, what happens is when you consume fiber, it passes through your stomach, your small intestine, which is 15 feet long, and it arrives to your colon unchanged. There's different types of fiber, which we can elaborate on more if you like. Some types of fiber are what we call prebiotic, which is what we were just talking about.
so they're food for the bacteria in your intestine.
They're food for the bacteria in the intestine, and so they are one of the few things that gets all the way through the small intestine and arrives in the large intestine unchanged. And your bacteria that live in the colon, in the large intestine, get into an absolute feeding frenzy. And they go nuts and they consume it. They consume it and it makes them stronger. And as a result of getting stronger, they multiply and they grow. We're talking about the anti-inflammatory microbes, the ones that you do want. They're multiplying, they're growing. And then what they do is they pay you the favor back. Thank you for feeding us. Let me nourish your body with this healing molecule, the short chain fatty acids. Butyrate, acetate, propionate, those are the three names. I call them short chain fatty acids so that we can just keep them all into one bundle. And those things are incredibly powerful from a healing perspective.
They even, you say, are cancer fighting.
They are cancer fighting in a very fascinating way. Let me nerd out and be a scientist for a moment. I can't help myself. I have to go here. So for cancer to occur, what do we need? We need cells to multiply.
Mm-hmm.
We need cells to be basically just keep copying themselves. And in that process of making copies of itself, you need something called a histone deacetylase. Okay. And people who have been through medical school, they have a vision in their head of what this looks like. It's like a ball with a piece of string wrapped around it. If you can block the histone deacetylase, you can block the cell from copying itself. Guess what blocks the histone deacetylase?
Short chain
Butyrate,
fatty acids.
short chain fatty acids. And this is the reason why in the study that came out in January 2019 by Dr. Reynolds, Andrew Reynolds, in that study, the rate of colon cancer was dramatically reduced with the consumption of dietary fiber. So was the rate of breast cancer too, by the way. And this is the reason why it works.
So fiber is more than just getting us to go to the bathroom. Fiber also, from what you're saying, contributes to the explosion of good bacteria in our colon, which in turn then produce short chain fatty acids, which help our body in a myriad of ways, and our brains, by the way, go through, improve our health and our strength.
I totally agree. Yes, that is exactly what's happening. And let me just give you a quick example. Let's talk about a person who has a damaged gut. These are my patients. Mm-hmm. This is what I do for a living all day, every day. I was doing it today. And the person who has a damaged gut, you'll see people use the term on the internet, leaky gut.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I don't really love that term. Instead, I would use the term dysbiosis, dysbiosis, dysbiosis. What is that? What is dysbiosis? This is what I'm talking about in the person who has digestive issues. This is also what is associated with immune-mediated issues, allergic conditions like asthma, or autoimmune diseases like celiac, Crohn's, rheumatoid arthritis, MS. This is also associated with hormonal issues, PCOS, endometriosis, associated with brain issues, so Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, depression, anxiety. Dysbiosis has far-reaching health consequences, far beyond the gut. But everyone who has gut issues has dysbiosis.
And what is that? It sounds like it's an imbalance, but
it is. An imbalance is probably the right word to use. It's a loss of the good bacteria, an increase of the bad bacteria. Sometimes there is a loss of diversity of the different varieties or species of microbes that you have in your gut. And when this happens, when you lose the good guys and you get more bad guys, what you see is that the tight junctions, which are basically spot welds that hold the cells in the colon together, they break down and they open up. And now you have what we call increased intestinal permeability, which is okay if you want to call that leaky gut. That's what happens. And what leaks into the bloodstream is bacterial endotoxin, which causes inflammation throughout the entire body.
Right. And then is like the host for so many of those, not only diseases, but autoimmune diseases, situations that are happening in our body. Is that right?
Yes. Okay. Yes, 100%. I mean, if you want to talk about all of these different conditions, this is potentially the driving factor that we're talking about here. So the point from my perspective is these short chain fatty acids, when we're talking about dysbiosis connected to all these different things, we want to reverse this, right? And the way that we do this is right here, what we're talking about. Because when you consume fiber, you are getting more good guys. You're getting short chain fatty acids. The short chain fatty acids directly suppress the bad guys. So you are restoring that balance to the microbiome. And at the same time, the short chain fatty acids repair the tight junctions. When you restore that balance and repair the tight junctions, you don't have the release of bacterial endotoxin anymore. You just reverse the leaky gut.
I know people who have these diseases of the intestine like Crohn's, where there's a lot of inflammation, or IBS, IBD, these sort of general discomfort in this area and inflammation. And they actually avoid fiber. And doctors used to definitely say, because I had a friend who had a very serious inflammation in her colon. She was told not to eat vegetables at all.
Right.
And now I think that's changed. Now, your book says that you need to eat these things to improve the gut. What's to explain where the truth? Give us the truth.
You just threw me an alley-oop, and I'm so grateful for that right now. Thank you for that. All right, because people need to hear this. So first, what is inflammatory bowel disease? It is overactivation of your own immune system. But believe it or not, this is kind of weird. It's not autoimmune. It is not attacking your body. You know what it's attacking? Your microbiome. Your immune system is attacking your microbiome, which is the reason why they've never found an antibody that proves that people have Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis, the two types of inflammatory bowel disease, because it's not autoimmune. It's attacking the microbiome. All right. And so if you believe that the microbiome is relevant to inflammatory bowel disease, which I think every gastroenterologist in America would agree on that statement, how can you deny that diet has anything to do with it when your microbiome is formed by your diet? And so I will tell you that a few years ago, I was the same guy. You need to cut your fiber. All right. Here's where I am today. This is what people need to do. You need to get your disease into remission. For most people, diet by itself is not going to get you there right off the bat. You need medications. If you have a fire, if you have a forest that is burning, You don't start repairing the forest before you put the fire out. You put the fire out, you repair the forest, and you get that beautiful forest back. And that's what I want my patients to do. We get them into remission. That means that there is not disease activity. You could check them top to bottom. You would not find any active inflammation.
How do you do that? And then how do you repair? What are the differences between those prescriptions?
Well, the difference between those prescriptions is there is a stepwise approach that is extremely complicated and nuanced in our field. I mean, I'm going to tell you that's one of the most complicated things that I have to deal with as a gastroenterologist.
Well, is the first step usually drugs, and the second step? Okay, so the first step is drugs for those who are have a lot of damage, and the second step is what? How do we get that back to balance, or to the people who just have a little bit of discomfort or inflammation or some diarrhea every so often? What are the recommendations for the healthiest gut that you can get
to get them back in a homeostasis?
Yeah. So whether we are talking about the person with inflammatory bowel disease with a rip-roaring flare, or talking about the person who has, gas bloating after a meal, these are just different levels of severity of the same process, which is damage to the gut, which we just defined. It's dysbiosis. Mm-hmm. So we're trying to repair dysbiosis. Now, I already said, step one, inflammatory bowel, put the fire out. You need medication to do that. But step two, when we pick up on diet, which is when I start to implement my diet, is the same regardless of who the person is. Mm. And we follow core tenets, okay? There are core tenets that are quite simple that can transform your health. There was a study, it's called the American Gut Project. It is by far the largest study to date to make a connection between our diet and our lifestyle and the health of our microbiome. These are not doctors with an agenda. These are scientists who could win a Nobel Prize. And when they analyzed the American Gut Project for the first time and published the results, there was one specific characteristic above all else, the number one predictor of a healthy gut microbiome. And that was the diversity of plants in your diet. It is not about grams of fiber. It is not about, honestly, being vegan. This was more powerful than being vegan because you could be a junk food vegan. This is about diversity of plants in the diet. And it makes so much sense. Here's why. Every single plant has its own unique mix of fiber. Mm. We don't even know how many types of fiber exist. There's not even an estimate. And so every plant has its own types of fiber, which feeds its own little populations of microbes. So when you have a wide mix of different types of plants, all the healthy microbes get fed. But when you cut out categories, whichever microbes thrived on that category, they're not being fed, which means that they're starving, which means that they are failing and they fall apart.
So you recommend, I think it's at least 30 different plant foods every week. And so that diversity gives you a diverse microbiome, and diversity in microbiome also means a healthy person. Is that what I'm hearing from you?
Right. So if we go back to our definition of dysbiosis, a person who has dysbiosis has loss of diversity. Mm. These conditions that we're talking about associated with dysbiosis, whether it be inflammatory bowel, digestive issues, autoimmune issues, neurologic issues, whatever it may be, they're all associated with a loss of diversity in the gut. Mm. Obesity, type 2 diabetes, loss of diversity.
So loss of diversity and also too many bad guys.
Well, the loss of diversity comes with the too many bad guys. So you lose the balance at the same time. It all happens as one big package. Mm-hmm. Oh. Okay. But when they study these patients, they uniformly find that there's a loss of diversity. Diversity, just to kind of point this out for a moment, I think this is very important to understand. Biodiversity is a fascinating topic. Let's zoom out for a moment, stop talking about our gut, and let's look at biodiversity in any ecosystem. The health of the Amazon rainforest is dependent on biodiversity. When animal species go extinct, that rainforest becomes less healthy, more volatile. I don't like mosquitoes. I also don't want to see mosquitoes go extinct because that would cause harm to the ecosystems in which they currently live. Our gut is as much of an ecosystem as the rainforest. And the loss of diversity causes instability, which can lead to disease. So we want to restore maximum diversity to our gut. The way that we do that is with dietary diversity of plants. And there is no, Alexandra, there is no hard cutoff. The number 30, to be fair, is what was in the study. But if you look at the statistics, it's not about the number 30. It could have been a continuous number.
Sure.
It was just the way that they did the analysis. You're better with 35 than you are with 30.
How many do you get, Dr. B? I'm wondering if you ever count it, because I think I'm going to count this week. Dotsie, I think you should count. You're going to get like 100.
I don't know.
Dotsie will get 100.
I'm going to count.
Dr. B, have you counted?
I had one day where I had a competition against an influencer on Instagram, and I counted, and I had, I believe, 43 between breakfast and lunch. Now I was going hard. I was going hard, but
still shows it's possible. So some people think there aren't even 43 options in the vegan world, but there are.
Yeah.
Well, and that's actually a great point, because actually, if you look, most Americans are certainly less than 50 total. Even people who are trying are less than 50 total.
You mean 50 in their whole life? Basically, they eat the same 50 foods? Is that what you're saying?
I mean, I think 50 in their whole life is where most Americans are right now, not even in a given calendar year. And if you look at, we were talking before about the tribal people. All right, now the tribal people have 40% more diversity than we do in the United States. So by all measures, they have a much healthier microbiome. And it's not just grams of fiber. Yes, they eat more than 100 grams of fiber. They also, the estimate is 600 varieties of plants.
Wow.